listening to AM Ocala Live, WOCA, The Source, 96.3 FM, 1370 AM. As we are broadcasting live from the Paddock Mall, streaming live, YouTube Live, WOCA, The Source Radio. As I still have Lena here in the studio, as we're now going to round out our show, as we're 20 minutes before the top of the 11 o'clock hour. And I'm just looking at Joe there saying, hey, he's Lysoling himself down. There you go. That'll beat it. That'll beat COVID-19. As we're getting you started this week, this second full week of April here, to the Monday, to the tune of a new day. Happy Monday, everybody! I hope everybody had a great weekend. Had a happy Easter, even though for most people I've talked to, it's been a really different one, a really different adaptation to what we look forward to with that holiday and everything. But I hope everybody had a good meal with the immediate family and maybe Zoomed and FaceTimed the immediate family, or the other family, because you got your immediate at home. It's the outside family or whatever have you. But nonetheless, you know what's crazy too is you want to know how unorthodox it was. We ordered a pizza.
Yeah.
I usually try to throw together something really good in the Instapot and make like a nice meal for it, but I was just like, you know what? At the beginning, it was going to be hot dogs and tater tots, and then after a while, I was like, let's just get a pizza. And
Even easier.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks to who delivered it, because I know it looked like she's pretty busy, and it's on Easter Sunday nonetheless. So I'm sure she'd like to have been home and amongst everything going to door, and amongst the coronavirus stuff and everything else. So a lot of those people who are still working in the restaurant and still delivering and doing everything they can, that's part of it too. And of course, shout out to everybody that's a first responder, down to the healthcare workers that are actually right there at the forefront of dealing with it all together. And everybody else, I'm going to shout out to everybody else that took a position that had no idea it would here's the right word, mutate into something else that they didn't see as now taking responsibility in the position they're in to forward everything necessary to deal with this crisis.
Yeah.
And, that's one of those things that I've talked to a few people. It's like when I say, I didn't expect to be hosting a radio show and have it become a world pandemic, but then they're like, I didn't expect to be doing this and have it become the same way. So shout out to them also nonetheless. Now, as we move on here from Easter Sunday, I wanted to bring up just another thing. I was hoping some other folks would call in and maybe share their opinion with it just a little bit. But coming out of Kentucky, it's a little controversial in the concepts. I read this earlier in the day as let's see here. Let me get back to finding it, because I think it was at the forefront, and then it kind of got drifted to the side. But anyway, long story short was there was still, in lieu of the quarantine, in lieu of the social distancing, and in lieu of everything being closed within state's protocol, Kentucky made national news with the expectation of having congregations come together for Easter in lieu of everything being shut down, to the extent that the Kentucky State Troopers were going around and actually taking down license plate information of the people that congregated, and VIN numbers if they covered up their license plate, so to speak, to the idea that even the reverend for the Baptist church that had the thing and everything pretty much said it's a constitutional right, and yet it's to the idea that that's where we're at, though. That's the sacrifice of, what is for health, safety, or can you still? And it's not like they were getting together in one building specifically for like spring break and to have their own like basketball game. This was for what is different to the extent of our own country, which is getting together to celebrate a day of the Christian holiday, which is very much one of the biggest Christian holidays. Yeah,
it's the capstone of the Holy Week for most Christian religions.
Yeah, and what do you think overall? I was going to ask your opinion.
Oh, man. This is a tough one, because we've talked before on this show about to what extent is it the role of a government to intervene in your individual choices. And they bring up that, the right to assembly is enshrined constitutionally along with your right to religious observance. But, obviously the Constitution, according to all case precedent, can be mitigated by things like your right to assembly has the right to be curbed by governmental permitting and all of those things.
Right.
And so
in lieu of a crisis, in lieu of an emergency is part of that.
It's a tough call because it's going to be difficult to enforce. You can't stop people from doing something. If a large enough group of people want to do something, then they'll do it. But it also comes down to public safety because, what right do the people who did make that choice have to then potentially infect those who didn't make that choice? And so, it just becomes kind of that gray area between at what point do your personal rights have the right to infringe on somebody else's personal rights.
Now, with that, they said, and I found it here, it says, as the hymns sang out Easter Sunday with a large outdoor speaker overlooking the Maryvale Baptist Church parking lot, two Kentucky State Troopers placed quarantine notices on the parishioners' cars and wrote down their license numbers because inside the church, roughly 50 worshipers ignored the government Andy Beshear's order against mass gatherings during the coronavirus pandemic so they could attend services together on Christianity's holiest day. It says several said as they left they had no intention of abiding by the notice of their windshields, but they actually had, and they show a picture of it, of a big notice that pretty much says that they are now expected to 14-day self-quarantine or, quote, face the threat of further enforcement measures. And it says exactly what troopers will do with those license numbers or what steps the governor will take wasn't immediately clear. What is clear is that the church's pastor, Reverend Jack Roberts, who has no intention of ending in-person services, is joining a handful of other churches across Kentucky that have rebuffed Beshear's wishes. And it's with that I always thought that, it deserves, and that's what the platform is to have that conversation. And with that, we actually have a caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning. That's almost like a scene out of The Godfather where they were taking down license plates at the wedding.
Yeah.
What did the troopers think they were doing? This wasn't the Appalachian meeting. And there's only 50 people. I mean, it wasn't like a mega church.
That's true. And, I think it gets brought up again that it was mentioned in the state of Florida, made national news about 2 weeks ago when it was for, I say 2 weeks ago, I think it was just a week ago or was it 2 weeks? But anyway, there's the church down in, I think it was Hernando County that the priest did the kind of the same thing, but he actually explained the idea that they maintained social distancing within the pews and that they actually sterilized and cleaned everything before and then thereafter.
Yeah.
And we don't hear those details of this. I think the majority of the story is the rebuttal.
And the governor has said that churches are what do you call them, necessary places.
Essential, if you will.
They're not on the prohibited list.
Now, do you have an opinion of what you think they might do with those license plate numbers, and if people don't abide by the quarantine order?
I don't know. I mean, if they're going to follow these guys around like they're mobsters.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But thank you very much for the call, and thank you for listening, partner.
Have a good day.
You too. Yeah, so that was a good analogy. He's like, like in the movie The Godfather, where they start taking down the license plates at the wedding. But like I said, I think it deserved some platform of conversation to want to hear it from different sides. I mean, I think you and we talked about that. Maybe it was off air, but it's the idea that I think media gets overlooked to only hear one side or get you emotionally invested in one side or the other. And then that side is supposed to be argumentative against the other. Mm-hmm. However, it'd be neat to hear all sides. It'd be neat to hear how people, do think about it overall too.
Well, this is an interesting one for me because I really kind of believe both things to be true. I kind of believe that the quarantine is something that can save people's lives and that that's valuable, but I also believe in the individual right to make autonomous decisions about your own body. And so it's a challenge.
And this is one of those decisions, with talking with Galen earlier this morning, he's like, okay, that may be the case to say, hey, we give you the opportunity to decide whether or not you should play on the air of safety to not spread the virus, but that should be our choice, not to be infringed or to be intimidated, I'll use the word there, by law enforcement to say we're just following orders.
And
so
then,
it's kind of a thing.
You do know, though, that the government on the other side of it is thinking to themselves, well, like, who's going to be held accountable if the outbreak worsens and stuff like that. And so...
Do you think that's one of the things that is maybe a slight downfall with our societies, because we always have to have something to blame?
Well, I definitely think that there's a degree of blame game, and I also think that one of the criticisms I've heard of our government most frequently is the idea that everybody's kind of driven by their own electoral chances. And I think that this is certainly the two go hand in hand, the blame game versus who can and cannot get reelected or get elected or keep their power. Those things go together. And so I think it's all part of the same debate.
Now, one of the callers for this morning she shared her opinion with and I think she was throwing a bone to our community and some of the religious organizations within our county, saying, hey, why can't they get creative like we have, which was a really good point. But also, too, she brought in the idea this is the numbers game, if you will. She mentioned rural type areas and how it's different from epicenters of New York.
Yeah.
Again, though, when we're talking 3.5 to 4 million people per an area with only so many, 20-something thousand affected or whatever. But the idea was they threw out the numbers here for Kentucky. And it says that Roberts arrived at the church Sunday morning to give several piles of nails dumped at the church entrances to the parking lot. He said he wouldn't tell his congregation to follow or defy the orders that the government had announced Friday in his ongoing effort to hold down the spread of COVID-19. Now, in Kentucky, the virus has killed, and this is how they say, is nearly 100 people. Now, is it 100 people or is it not? It's nearly 100. Well, again, it's those catchwords.
There's testing issues too. It's difficult to know what deaths can and can't be attributed because the testing hasn't been as comprehensive as I think we would have liked.
Yeah, and there's another side of it too when you talk numbers. Now, in some other areas, but when it says in Kentucky, nearly 100 killed and affected more than 1,800. Not 18,000, 1,800.
Yeah.
So, and then like we said, well, man, that's an own dissected conversation in itself about the numbers and whether or not those would be accurate enough. And then the one number that a lot of people leave out now, because I understand the logic to it, but it's those who have recovered from COVID-19. It's actually an incredible number that actually have recovered when you think about how many globally have had it. But on that note, I'm going to end it on that, and we're going to finish the show here as we'll just change gears a little bit, just to end the show on a little fun note, a little positive note, as it gives everybody an opportunity to have something to talk about today. As we move through, it says here a couple of Dallas Cowboys football players are in hot water for partying during the pandemic. As this was pretty neat. Somebody said, apparently when you finish your season 8-8 or just at 500, I guess the party goes on for months and months. So as it was said that didn't release the names of the players for the information I have, but anything that drums up bad publicity for the Cowboys, I'm all about. Oh. As a Saints fan. It says, this one's interesting. We're talking about some things with Humane Society here. It says to get around lockdowns, okay, people are renting dogs. It says the lockdown in Moscow, Russia is very strict. Now, mind you, let's take that first sentence. When we say that to get around lockdowns, people are renting dogs, the first sentence has to do with Russia. we'll take that with a grain of salt. It says the lockdown in Moscow, Russia is very strict. In fact, one of the only ways to go out is to walk your dog, which is why some people are renting their neighbors' dogs so they have a reason to get out. The going rate is a few bucks for a half hour.
Wow. Lucky dogs.
Lucky dogs, yeah.
Getting double, triple the walking.
How about that? And I guess, too, that paints a little picture about the differences between lockdown, quarantine, and shutdown than it does maybe for what we've been talking about going to the grocery store and getting food for the dinner. They're not even allowed to go out, but the only way you are is to relieve the dog.
Well, it goes back to how you started off this segment, the police coming in, taking down the license plate numbers and issuing a notice. It could be more draconian too. It isn't.
Yes.
It isn't just that
Yes.
is an extreme measure that we haven't seen taken here in our community, and we're lucky in that way. But it also is a reminder that there are other places of the world where things go differently.
And right there is exactly, like we said, the platform of the idea of giving the conversation. Look how many directions that can go in based on the conversation of just having this one article. And obviously it's trying to push sides. But like you said, as hard as we can put this situation from yesterday in Kentucky under a microscope, hold on a minute. At the end of the day, I just read an article that in Russia, the only way you can go outside
As if you borrow a dog.
legally is if you own a dog. And let me rent your poodle
Yeah.
for half an hour. I've got no money, but I've got half a bottle of vodka. It's good. Russian. It says here, tip twice as much during coronavirus. It says what to tip in this coronavirus economy. If you can afford it, a hospitality expert says to double your normal tip for delivery drivers putting themselves in harm's way. It says Paul Bagden, a professor, Johnson & Wales University in Rhode Island, said, "Go with your heart. It's good karma, good for mankind." With that, it was kind of the idea, I think, where was that? Somebody mentioned this idea that if you typically go out, and there's a lot of people that eat out all the time, and they said those are the people that they know they have the income and resources to go out eat out often, and a lot of times these people that do tip well. If they can't go out, all they can do is get it for takeout or for the delivery. And somebody said maybe putting the normal tip of the percentage that you usually do in a jar, so that way when you get back to normal and you do go out to eat, you've got something set aside that you normally would have tipped for that you would just end up giving them
Little ad.
when it's time to, or just to the idea of just tipping more now.
Yeah.
And hey, I'll be honest with you, it's hard to do. It's hard to do because you're trying to justify really it's delivery. They didn't really do a whole lot. They didn't turn down the music and refill my water pitcher and then ask me for dessert.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the idea and the willingness of like this guy said in the quote, just go with your heart.
And just having
it's good
compassion
karma.
for
Yeah.
people who their livelihood's been affected by this tremendously. And, if you're in a tip-based, service-based industry, this has been a really hard time. A lot of people have lost work, lost jobs, lost hours. It's about having empathy for the people who are still providing you with service,
Absolutely. And as move on here, I was trying to screen this one just to make sure as I see the headline, and it says it's wacky but true. And usually these come in pretty funny, but lately they've been a little bit very, very depressing. It says here, wacky but true, I have coronavirus, and I hope you have it now. It says a woman in Pennsylvania is facing charges, and we've heard these things about people trying to be punks, if you will, and act a certain way to do or think they're funny in the spread up. So it's a woman in Pennsylvania is facing charges and being tested for coronavirus after state police say she coughed in a trooper's face and told him she had the virus while she was being arrested for public drunkenness.
Oh, no.
Police say 37-year-old Jessica Harvey will be prosecuted to the fullest extent. And that's one of those. It's wacky but true. But then again, it's just such a touch on it for the idea.
Well,
yeah,
I had read something about that guy who had gone around licking some things in the grocery store, but he's being charged with like a terrorism felony, which is
right.
Going to have tremendous impact on the remainder of his life. And so, it's a question of definitely wanting to hold people accountable when they do things like that. This is dangerous behavior, but also how extreme do we want to get?
Now, if I'm a fan of democracy and if I'm a fan of the United States of America, then I really hope, in favor of him, I really hope he gets a decent lawyer. I hope that so he can go to trial, because that's the point of it. Now, a lot of people don't have the opportunity for that. Do I agree with what he did? Absolutely not. But the right by trial, he deserves at least to have that be played out.
There's a lot of ramifications for that kind of charge.
Absolutely. And just to leave it here with the with the goofy last point on TV, we've been trying to keep up on the American Idol, as now they've got a 2-week-long hiatus, and they told us, Ryan Seacrest come on last night. He's like, hey, listen, we can't do anything live. We're going to see what we can do. But for the next 2 weeks, now that we have the top 20, we're just going to give you a little avenue of who the top 20 contestants are. 10 this week, 10 next week. But what was also kind of shoved down our throats, because it's already taped, was, the spinoff here for The Bachelor.
Yeah.
The Bachelor presents Listen to Your Heart in the new spin-off series, Listen to Your Heart, The Bachelor. 20 musicians from across the country will try to find the partner in their life and work through music-themed dates and challenges. And you remember the band The Plain White Tees? They'll be performing the premiere. They only had that one song, Hey There, Delilah. Wow. But it looks like a cheapskate, a little less than Tiger King as far as dramatics, but nonetheless, that brings us to the top of the 11 o'clock hour, which is the end of our show, AM Ocala Live. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I hope everybody had a great weekend as we make our way into tomorrow. And a reminder, a little PSA too, it is the week for everybody to start getting their stimulus checks, and I hope that helps things for people who need it. Spend it wisely. I do say that because my buddy and I were joking about how somebody's probably going to say, hey, with my $1,200 stimulus, how many bottles of Corona could I get? Or like we saw yesterday, there's a post for $1,200 stimulus check. How many Taco Bell tacos is that? And then somebody actually did the math for them, even including tax. Wow. But with that being said, for Monday, good morning, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. Stay safe with the wind and expect some rain today. And until tomorrow, goodbye.
I'm Jan from Palm Garden. The well-being and safety of our residents is our top priority and at the heart of every decision we make. There are no visitors permitted in our center, but family members are encouraged to reach out by phone or Skype, Facebook or FaceTime. Everyone is screened daily and wears a mask. New guests are tested and quarantined for 14 days. The response to these measures has been overwhelmingly positive. Thank you for your support and partnership. We are Palm Garden.
Shamrock Security Systems, 629-3223. Shamrock Security Systems is located here in Ocala, Florida. Shamrock Security Systems is a top-rated alarm company offering 24/7 monitoring, video surveillance, fire and flood protection. You'll sleep a little better once the job is done. Shamrock Security Systems for over 31 years. 629-3223. Get a 100% free quote from Shamrock Security. 629-3223. Are you a medical provider that doesn't like to settle for the same boring scrubs? Scrub Paradise in Ocala has a wide selection of top brand scrubs with embroidery available and the newest medical shoes and accessories. Every medical provider should look as great as the care they provide. Scrub Paradise is just off Easy Street next to Shoe Carnival in Ocala. Stop by today or give them a call at 352-873-4368. That's 352-873-4368.
Folks, in answers to hundreds of calls and messages, Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens has been deemed an essential business and is open regular hours Monday through Saturday during the current crisis. So take a few moments, check the deals on Bob's website, bobwinescamelliagardens.net, and give us a call with your order. We'll have it ready, curbside, and you won't even have to leave your car. This week, Bob has 6 agapanthus, just $35.99. Gorgeous Gerber daisies, not $4.99, just $2.99. Azaleas as low as $2.99. And citrus trees starting at $59.99 with a free bag of fertilizer. And by all means, check the tree deal. Nice-sized trees, many varieties, ready to grow now, starting at just $19.99. So check the ad, check us out, then come on out to Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens, a 5-acre open-air garden on Southeast 38th Street, Ocala. Daily till 4:30, and the same blooming place since 1952.
A lake wind advisory will be in effect from 2 p.m. this afternoon until 6 p.m. this evening. Sunny to partly cloudy and hot today. High 94, breaking the record of 91 set in 1993. Partly cloudy for tonight, low 72. Mostly cloudy and warm again tomorrow. The temperature breaking the record of 92 set in 2018 with a high 93. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Kevin Snyder.
Hey, WOCA.
Broadcasting